Just how big can cruise ships get? The world's largest cruise liner, the Wonder of the Seas, set sail in March 2022, hosting more than 9,000 guests and crew. To give you some perspective, it's 100 metres longer than the Titanic. These megaships take tourists to some of the most beautiful places on the planet. But behind the dreamy photos and blue horizons, there's growing concern about pollution, regulation breaches and carbon emissions. In 2019, just under 30 million passengers cruised. That's almost double the passenger numbers of a decade earlier. The most recent data shows shipping accounts for almost 3% of global carbon emissions. And while cruise ships only make up a tiny fraction of the international shipping trade, the passengers are punching above their weight when it comes to their impact on the environment. Environmental activist group Friends of the Earth has been making cruise line report cards like these for the past decade. The organisation has been watching the cruise industry in the US since its rapid growth in the early 2000s.
We saw all of these cruise companies getting cited by the federal government for pollution. And they would go on federal probation, and then they would pay their dues or their fines. And then once they're off federal probation, the violations would start again. Most recent example of that is Carnival Corporation.
Parent company of P&O Cruises, the major cruise operator in Australia and the South Pacific, has a litany of environmental regulation violations against its name.
They usually get caught for oily waste dumping. There is some level of oily waste that is allowed under federal and international law, but in the main, it's the magic pipes, bypassing their treatment systems for their oily waste separators and dumping that in the middle of the night.
Princess Cruises, which is a subsidiary of Carnival Corporation, pleaded guilty in Miami federal court to violating its probation in relation to previous environmental crimes. In 2017, Princess Cruises was fined US $40 million after pleading guilty to felony charges stemming from its deliberate dumping of oil-contaminated waste and intentional acts to cover it up. In 2019, the company was convicted of 6 probation violations and fined an additional $20 million. A review of academic studies showed that despite technological advances, cruising was a major source of air, water and land pollution, which affects fragile habitats. One of the authors says he doesn't see how such large vessels can transition to a sustainable model.